Hi, today I'd like to talk about the iPod. The iPod is one of the greatest consumer electronics success stories of all time. It's something that evokes very strong passions and feelings in the people who use them, and it's also become almost ubiquitous. And the degree to which it's been successful is really what I want to take you through today. It's worth remembering that it's not long ago that iPods didn't exist. 2001 was the introduction of the first iPod. 2002 was the introduction of iTunes for Windows, which meant that iPods could be used with Windows computers rather than Mac computers. And 2003 was the opening of the iTunes Store, which was the first time that that convenient, legal downloads of music could be bought relatively economically. Some more numbers: 110 million is the number of iPods that have been produced to date, and it has a 65% market share for portable MP3 type players. That's a level of market share which is really quite exceptional for any kind of product category in any area of activity. And another interesting figure is 5%. 5% is the average amount of music bought from the iTunes Store that people have on their iPods. So although the store is a very important part of the iPod story, it's not the only way by which people get music files onto their devices. Person we most associate with the creation of the iPod is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is a very powerful character within the industry, and Apple as a company has consistently batted above its weight in terms of the effect it has on everybody else. And Steve Jobs is somebody who invokes very strong feelings, and the cult of personality of Steve Jobs is something that he has been responsible for cultivating as much as anything else. So very strong feelings for and against. But he led the iPod development team very effectively, and really developed the machine in a very short period. It was 8 months from the pulling together of the people to the introduction of the first production iPod. And it's not something that Steve Jobs did on his own. There are other people involved, a whole number of other people, but two people most significantly. Jonathan Ives is Apple's executive VP for industrial design, responsible for the iMac and the iBook and all sorts of other machines, but a particular impact on the design of the iPod itself. And Brian Fidel, who is the software engineer, was the person who actually came to Apple with the idea of the iTunes Store and a means of selling and distributing music as electronic files. There are other people at Apple, probably too numerous to mention, involved with the detailed software of the machine and various other aspects of the project. But those three are probably the most significant individuals in the project team. And one of the reasons why they were successful is because for the particular group that they were targeting, music is very important to them. It's not the only thing that it's important, but it plays a significant part in their lives, and actually had done for a number of years. Really, the precursor to the iPod was the Sony Walkman. Around about 25 years ago, Sony introduced the playback-only portable cassette recorder that worked with headphones, so people could walk around listening to music, use it in their offices, whatever. The disadvantage with the Walkman was that you had to carry big boxes of cassettes around, or bags of cassettes around, if you wanted to listen to more than one thing at a time. And actually the same problem occurred to a slightly lesser extent, still occurred, with the various generations of Walkman that followed, the Discman, the mini disc player, and so on. So portable music really involved carrying a lot of software around as well as the machine that you played it on. And the essence of the iPod idea was that you could carry a very large proportion of your music collection with you all the time in something that fitted in your pocket. So instead of racks of LPs, CDs, mini discs, whatever, everything fitted into the small portable machine. And the development team was very keen to make sure that it really was portable. This is one of the prototypes they developed at the early stages of the project, and it's really something that comes in two parts. The one on the left, the small one, is something they developed very early on to identify what the target size for the device was going to be. This was the size that would conveniently fit into shirt pockets, pants pockets, or whatever. The one on the right was the working prototype, which tested the scroll wheel, the hard drive, the display screen, the user interaction, and so on. And one of the reasons it's that big is because at the early stages of developing these kind of electronic devices, before things are miniaturized in integrated circuits, the breadboards and the various devices take up a lot of space. It also had the advantage that when it was visible, when it was seen outside the company, that it wasn't evident what the company's ambitions were in terms of packing all this stuff into the small cigarette packet size volume on the left. This is a cutaway of one of the early iPods that shows some of the critical features. One of the things that made it possible at all was the availability of a 1.5-inch hard drive produced by Hitachi, which hadn't existed before in that sort of size and with those kind of capacities. And the other parts of it are the display screen, which used the menus, and the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel has been through different generations and different iterations, but the interaction between the scroll wheel and the screen was an essential part of creating a simple-to-use, intuitive, easy-to-operate device. Other parts that contribute to its success is that in all its forms it's been a very elegant piece of product design. And what John Ives was aiming at with this kind of design was something which was as iconic and simple as the Zippo lighter or the early brown transistor radios produced in Germany. You can see the ancestry of the product design of the iPod in these other examples. But it wasn't just the design of the device itself which was significant to its success. Equally important was the design of iTunes software, which enabled you to negotiate and find stuff in a large music library. And probably most important of all, the creation of the iTunes Store. This meant that music files were available cheaply, conveniently, and legally because of the deals that Steve Jobs negotiated with the record companies, and because of the creation of the digital rights management software that was put into it as well. So it's easy to access stuff from the iTunes Store. It's not easy to pirate it. It's not easy to transfer it elsewhere. That's deliberate. And that reassured the record companies that their interests and their nervousness about piracy and copyright issues were actually being addressed. But it still is the case that not everything that's on everybody's iPod is actually legal. Another contributing factor to the success was a very simple, very direct, and very extensive marketing campaign designed by Chiat Day, Apple's advertising agents. It was based on silhouettes which showed people doing all sorts of different things, but identifying very closely with the kind of activities that young people are interested in. And most importantly, against that silhouette, you saw the white wires and the white shape of the earbuds, which was really the only thing that was visible when somebody was walking down the street. Before that time, earbuds and headphones tended to have black cords, so you really didn't notice them. But one of the characteristics of the iPod's white cords was that it was possible, as an early adopter, to signal to people that you were listening to an iPod, not one of those other MP3 machines. There's a series of timelines of the different models that have been through in the 7 years since its introduction. A consistent pattern of developing bigger memory and things getting smaller. And here's some examples of the kind of modifications that people make to this simple Apple box to make it their own. There's something like 5,000 different accessories now available for the iPod. Some further reading if you're interested, The Cult of iPod and The Perfect Thing by Stephen Levy, a particular fan of the device. So, there we have it, iPod.